Welcome to the Contractor Success Forum. You don't know what you don't know here on the Contractor Success Forum, so we're here to help you out with that. And today we are talking about what you should know before getting a bond. We have today with us Stephen Brown to help us with that because he is a construction bond agent with McDaniel Whitley Bonding and Insurance Agency, and he has over 30 years of experience underwriting and placing bonds for you, so he can talk about what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
That's right. That's right. And we have with us Wade Carpenter with Carpenter and Company CPAs, helping contractors nationwide to become permanently profitable. And I'm just Rob Williams here with IronGate Entrepreneurial Support Systems, your profit strategist driving profit in your businesses. So let's talk about it, Stephen.
Just Rob Williams. That's kind of a.
I know. I'm just me.
On yourself. You are the man.
How can I be the man when you're the man? You're the man, baby.
Okay. All right. Hi, Wade. You're the man. What's up with you this morning?
Well, I'm still figuring out what I don't know, but I'm still trying to figure out how Rob uses aviation to fly into construction projects.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we'll talk about that. Doesn't every contractor need a charter airline for his contracting business to get to those faraway jobs?
It's just a good business decision, I think.
Oh, yeah.
To buy a plane or a helicopter or both.
Yeah, your bonding agent loves seeing that on the financials, I'm sure.
If you got enough working capital net worth, this is America. You can buy whatever you want. Who cares what a bonding company thinks? But, the topic today that you wanted to talk about was getting a bond. What kind of impressions do you make? What do you look for to say yes? Because isn't that the advice you need? Is for people to say yes to what you want?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember Rob was telling us the first time he got bonded, and he had an established business. I don't understand why the intimidation. I know a lot of times people have a problem turning over their financial statement. I didn't know if Rob wanted to relate that story.
Yeah, well, when I came to Stephen, I had maybe 2 decades, 20 years of experience, and then I had framing crews, and I owned my own truss manufacturing and lumber yard, and I'd been a home builder and land developer for a long time. So I had a lot of experience, and I had financials, but I had friends that had a lot better financials, and they were big commercial contractors. So the word bonding in our talks and what they had to go through intimidated me. So as I was coming out of the residential world to go into the commercial world of contracting, I heard the millions and millions of dollars that you had to have as capital, because I guess these guys were doing the big, large bonds. So I felt like a total imposter coming to you the first time. And I probably would have, if we hadn't already been friends, I may not have made that jump into the commercial area because I was so intimidated by thinking I had to be some big corporate structure or something. I just didn't know. And you got me a bond, and I was like, how did that happen?
Well, it was nothing for you to even remotely be embarrassed about. It's like going into a dentist and your teeth rotted out. I said, this may give you a hard time, but it's generally not your fault if you've got something bad going on. I don't know. But yeah. The point is that as a bond agent, it's my job to get your bond approved. If it makes sense to you and it makes sense to me, we got to get it approved. And that's first or foremost. So in order to get it approved, I go to the bond underwriters. And I used to be one. And when I was a bond underwriter, the way they trained me to think, guys, was look at the cash, character, and capacity of this contractor. Look at his cash situation. Capacity, can he do the work? Character, does he do what he says he's going to do? Those are the things that I would look for. And the first thing that paints the best picture of how you're doing is your financial statement. And I would be looking at a bond request, and if it was smaller, you'd be a little less picky. If it was bigger, you'd be more picky in the underwriting. But you'd look at someone who kind of had their act together and had a CPA prepared either a review or audited financial statement, and you'd open up the booklet and give a 5-minute underwriting just to tell you where you are, what's your working capital, what's your net worth, did you make money, and do you over and underbill a lot, and why, and then do you have a lot of backlog gross profit, or is there any? So all that takes about 5 minutes to just kind of skim through and see where you are. And in order to get to that point, you had to start somewhere. You had to put together a set of books, and you had to get an accountant. And you might have problems getting bonds because your accountant is not a construction oriented CPA. I talk about it all the time. So I guess from Wade's point of view, it's kind of hard to toot his own horn for what he does, but it's everything. It's like having a carpentry job without a hammer. You can't do it. You can't do it without the financials. And also, there is credit scoring bonds. So just like going to get your first house, you had to build up good credit. Well, you can get bonds based on credit only and tax returns showing that you're making money. But it all comes down to getting the financial statements done and putting together a good submission, making you look pretty before I take you to the dance. Wade, what do you think?
I have a lot of people that come to me and they don't even know where to start and what they have to give to you. And so I thought it'd be great if you could kind of tell us about the profile and the history and that kind of background and those kind of things that a brand new contractor might want to have in place to bring to you for the first time.
Okay. Well, the first thing for an ideal submission that I put together is a contractors questionnaire. All the companies have their own, but at McDaniel Whitley, we have our own, which is kind of a combination version of all the companies. So we know we're getting the information together. Name, address, federal ID tax number, phone number, email addresses, then name, home address of the owners, your social security number, date of birth. That's on the first page. And then moving down, they want to know what are the 5 biggest jobs you've completed in the past. So put them in order. And as a general rule, if you've completed a $250,000 job, you can get a $500,000 bond, 2 times the amount, if it makes sense and it's in your area of expertise. And then the next thing is 5 supplier references, names, address, and a contact person and phone number. A lot of underwriters call these people. So if you don't have 5, you need to build 5 up that know you and can say, what? Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're a great company. We've done business with them for X number of years. They pay their bills on time, blah, blah, blah. So that's the next thing. And then the next list is a list of subcontractors. If you're a general contractor that you've worked with, and if you're a subcontractor, general contractors you work with. Then there's a list of architects and engineers, and they want to know who you work with and on what jobs. And what was your gross profit on those jobs? Then they want to know who your key employees are, how long they've been with you, what their experience. Then they want to know what kind of insurance you have. And that's it. That's a contractor's questionnaire. And I can't tell you how many times I'm just struggling to put that together. And I don't know, like they say you have to look in the yellow pages for a good attorney. It's too late. If you come in with bad information and you don't have those relationships established, then we got a nick against us just starting off. So that's one way to think of it.
Stephen, can you put something together that we can put in the show notes to people? Because that was a lot to take in. So
I'll put together a sample
that'd be
submission
great.
that would be a perfect submission, that I would consider a perfect submission, and why it would be so good. That would make any bond underwriter drool over saying, yes, I'll do that. Yeah, we'll go out on a limb here. Yeah, we'll do that for you.
Yeah, and maybe a blank one that if somebody's thinking about it, they can start filling this out, and they may want 6 months to a year to start building that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely do that for people to get started. Then the next thing I put together in a submission beside the contractor's questionnaire is the last 3 year-end financial statements. And we've talked in the past, people have different fiscal year ends. April, June's common, December 31st is common. It doesn't matter to a bonding company, but that's kind of how you have to set up your books. And it's kind of a pain from insurance and everything else to not to kind of have a common date. But it seems to me like December 31st, Wade, is your busiest time of the year and the worst time to have a year end. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, December 31st is obviously the most common one, but that's one thing that you brought up that I think is critical. A lot of times people that are trying to get a bond for the first time, if they did any financial statement, usually they'll have a tax return or something like that. I encourage them, like, let's just do a formal financial statement not just a cash basis statement, but if you actually have jobs that are in progress at the end of the year, let's do over and under billings and give the bonding company, some history that, you know how to do this. And the other thing that I don't think you mentioned, but most people ask for a personal financial statement.
Right.
And
And
I don't know why that's such a hard thing for people to come up with, but
well, it's really not that hard. We have a sample personal financial statement form that bonding companies accept. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's amazing how many assets you leave out of your personal financial statement that could help you get a bond. And why not just get your CPA to help you put one together? I have that happen all the time with the fiscal year end, and it's just a nice presentation and it reasonably makes sense. But nevertheless, 3 years of fiscal year end review financial statements, a review letter. We've talked about that. That means that Wade has verified a number of the balances on there, and the bonding company feels like that's something I can hang my hat on. Personal financial statement, then resumes on any key employees, any information about the projects that you've completed. Then I put that together, and then before that happens, I have to get an idea of what you need. What do you need? What do you want me to do? What kind of bonds do you need? What program do you need? I don't know. I just need to get set up. Well, you're right. You're right. You need to get set up. So please don't be afraid to say, here's where I am and here's what I want to do. Once I know that, and then I have this great submission, a great contractors questionnaire, all this information is just popping. And then I call the underwriter. And then I say, I got something I want to talk to you about, which is absolutely magic to them. That's what they want to hear. I've got something I want to talk to you about. That means they're going to look at an opportunity. And then you tell them, this is a great so-and-so contractor. This is what they do. This is what their specialty is. And this is what I need. Okay, well, I'll take a look at it. You already give them the 5 minutes verbally, the 5 minutes underwriting. I always push send and then call immediately because I want it to pop right up there on the computer while I can get them fired up about it. And then the only thing I don't know that I can't control after I've sent it is when they pull your credit. They won't let me know what it says. Underwriters say, well, we've got some collection issues and some other things. And they're like, wow, I've worked so hard to build up my company assets, but personally, probably because they didn't follow profit first and they don't pay themselves. They don't pay their personal bills on time. And that sinks them. And they're like, oh, come on. So let's talk about it and be honest and let's get a move on.
While you were saying that, there were a couple of intimidation factors that I had that I kind of wrote down, like having an LLC, having a company, having 3 years of financials. What does somebody do that wants to start his own company? Just in the last few weeks, I've had 2 or 3 guys leaving an experienced business to start they've been saving up and they started their own commercial contracting. It may have been a trade and a specialty. What do these guys do?
I would say go talk to Wade. The foundation of your new business is your bookkeeping ability, because it has to be in place to implement profit first and to look at your cash flow and to manage the money you have before starting up a business. Even if you don't have a lot of cash, make sure you and your spouse have as good personal credit as any 2 human beings could be. And if it's the worst credit in the world right now, you can change that.
You just said something that so if some of these guys are starting something and they have a strong personal history, they can come to you or their bonding agent and still talk about it, and there may still be a possibility to get started.
Let's talk.
Yeah, so it's not don't well, I was going from the intimidation factor. I probably could have gone out much earlier with my newer businesses had I known. I'd heard you had to have this, 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 so I automatically disqualified myself before I even started, and I think we've had some comments in this podcast that let me know that, okay, this list is not a hard and fast list of things you have to have. You don't have to have 3 years of financials. You have some alternate methods, though, for somebody to start a
Right.
business. Because how do you start if you don't? It's a chicken or an egg thing.
I think you'd start off with the credit scoring program if you don't have 3 years experience. And if you only have 1 year of getting a CPA prepared to review financial statement from a good CPA, then you're going to have tax returns. for the previous 2 years if you've been in business at least 3 years. So starting off, we really want to push your experience and your capabilities. That's huge. And then they want to see that you have good personal credit. And then they want to see that there's potential for writing more bonds
Yeah.
with you. And you want to get them excited about that. And that kind of takes both of us working together.
To kind of piggyback off what you said, for a new contractor, one of the first questions I ask them, typically they work for a big company and then they're kicking off on their own, and maybe they've got some experience. Instead of saying, who's your CPA, I say, who's your bond agent? Do you ever plan to get a bond, even if you don't have one right now? Developing a relationship with a bond agent even before you need a bond. If you could talk to that, Stephen.
That's exactly right. Like I said, if you have to look in the yellow pages for a good attorney, it's too late. Get your relationship with your bond agent started. It's no big deal. And just like a dentist looks at bad teeth, we look at a lot of bad financial statements or things that just aren't there yet. And we talk about how to get you to the next step if you're not there. So you don't know what you don't know, number one. And number two, you got to start somewhere. You got to start. And if you're going to start a new company, before you quit, you want to kind of start getting these things going. At least before you quit, making sure your personal credit's good if you need a bond. And then it's just amazing the fast track bond program markets that are out there that will do smaller projects. We have one now that will go up to $1 million single job just based on your credit report. They also want to see 3 years of tax returns. And personally, I think it's a much more picky underwriting situation than just a $500,000 or under credit scoring bond. So anyway, that's just an opinion I have based on trying to get them approved. And being an underwriter, guys, they train me to think like an underwriter to approve bonds. And that just kind of helps me get your bonds approved because I kind of know how they think. And that's the mystery. Yeah, I've got contractors that are engineers, and you know how engineers think. They want to know the rules. What are the rules, Brown? I don't understand. Why if I sub this job back, why I don't get all my bond credit reinstated? There's just a lot of things that don't make sense. And they really do the more you start working at it, because the bigger you get, the more important the relationships are.
A lot of times when people start their own business, they go and they need workers' comp, or they need like a fleet auto policy or whatever for their business. And they go to whoever they have their personal insurance or their homeowner's insurance. That's a great way to talk to Stephen, and a lot of times they have workers' comp policies for a contractor that your traditional advertise on TV insurance agency is not going to have.
That's a fact. And here at McDaniel Whitley, all we handle is contractors. So that's what makes us better, I think, at what we do. We're obsessive about service. And, it's intimidating to come in to talk to someone about your finances, especially when you don't know them and you haven't been specifically referred by your best friend who does business with them. But I think that's kind of silly. You want a relationship to stand on its own 2 feet. And a mutual relationship means that I'm getting your bonds approved, and I only get paid when your bonds are approved. So I don't charge you anything to work with you. And so I don't know what kind of incentive I might want that could be a stronger type of incentive than not getting paid if you don't get the job.
I'm still hung up on the talk that the contractors have in the field and how inaccurate that is. I just as we were talking about it, and I had some guys that worked for me that had been commercial contractors before and it had bonds, and everything they told me was not right. Most of it was wrong. Are there any knockout things that you'd say, well, if you've got these problems, don't come to talk to me? Are there any absolute requirements that you have out of all those things that we talked about, or is just about everything open game and it's a puzzle to put together?
Bankruptcy is the toughest thing to get around. There are some ways to get around it. There's certain circumstances, but for a surety company, the fact that you file bankruptcy terrifies them because that's usually, I guess, if you did it once, you can do it again mentality that they think, well, if you've had a bankruptcy, then the odds are higher that you could have one while you're working on some bonded projects for us, and then you leave us holding the bag. So that's why, and a lot of these bonding companies reinsure their risk with reinsurance companies, and the reinsurance treaty says no bankruptcies. In other words, so if we approve your bond with a bankruptcy and you have a claim, then reinsurance says we're not going to kick in to help you pay off that claim. So why would any normal bonding company do that? So don't get your feelings hurt. It's just a fact. There's some ways and things that you can do to work around that. But beside that, the sky's the limit. If you have experience in your trade and you believe that you're good at what you do, and you believe you can manage people and you can manage money and you can manage your business, and that would be a challenge and that's exciting to you, then you should start your own company.
So listen, do listen to the bonding agents, and don't always listen to your buddies in the field on what they say is the requirement, or maybe
The
listen,
internet.
or the internet. Yeah.
I mean, I see people all the time like, well, I should be an LLC because I found an article online or something like that. A lot of the things that people publish out there are not necessarily true.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's scary. That's scary. And there's companies that say fast, easy performance bonds. And next thing you know, you go in, you start filling out their application information, and all they're doing is extracting right out of you what I would need to make a submission for you. And they're just trying to use those numbers to generate a bond for them. And if it spits out a no, it spits out a no. And I can't stand that. We work best with our underwriters that actually make a decision. They look at it and they see there's a little hair on things. They see, well, maybe this isn't right, but man, I really like them. I think they're going places. I think this is going to be a good account for us. Yeah, we'll do it. And then once they say yes to a bond, then I just shut up like a clam.
Yep.
That's my job.
Well, I think this has been great. I think maybe we could expand on this in another podcast about the types of bonds and maybe some of the other SBA programs and things like that. But I think this definitely helps somebody that's trying to get a bond for the first time. Hopefully, it'll encourage them to go talk to somebody. Even if they don't need one today, they may need one tomorrow.
Right. Do it.
All right, good. Give Stephen a call. All right, well, we went pretty long today, so really interesting topic. So we are the Contractor Success Forum. You don't know what you don't know, so come here and find out what you don't know. We are Stephen Brown, your bonding agent with McDaniel Whitley Bonding Insurance Agency. Thank you for giving us all this wonderful, invaluable information today. And Wade Carpenter with Carpenter and Company CPAs. And I am Rob Williams with IronGate Entrepreneurial Support Systems. Have a great day and come back to the Contractor Success Forum.